Good morning to all. Welcome to the BA first year class of English again. As we were doing the play As You Like It, in the previous classes we have studied Act 1 and Act 2, and in this class we are going to talk about Act 3. We'll do a brief brief summary of the scene 1 and scene 2 of Act 3. So let's see about the happenings in Act 3. In the scene 1 of Act 3, Duke Frederick, who was furious at the escape of Celia and Rosalind, is very furious, and now he comes to Oliver's house to fetch Orlando. And he has not been able to find Orlando at Oliver's house. As a result, he tells Oliver that he has a year to find his brother and bring him back, either dead or alive. In the meanwhile, Duke Frederick seizes all of Oliver's estate and will and hold it until Orlando is brought back to him. Then, in scene 2 of Act 3, Orlando enters with a piece of paper on which he has written a sonnet to Rosalind. So, Orlando is in the forest of Arden and he is in love with Rosalind, and he has started writing sonnets and poems on the barks of trees about Rosalind. He says that he will write his love poems on the bark of each and every tree in the forest. Orlando then hangs his sonnet on a tree and leaves it there, commenting, "Run, run, Orlando, carve on every tree." So, in Act 2, we can see that the romance between Orlando and Rosalind has started, and Orlando is badly in love with Rosalind, and he has started writing sonnets around the forest. Then again in scene 2, we meet the minor characters Corin and Touchstone. They enter, and Touchstone tells Corin what he thinks about the shepherd's life, and then asks Corin if he was ever at court. So then, in the very small talk between Touchstone and Corin, Touchstone makes fun of Corin, and he says that if Corin was never in court, he never learned good manners. Corin does his best to protest, but cannot win the verbal battle against Touchstone. So, we see a very brief talk between the minor characters Corin and Touchstone. Corin is a shepherd in the forest of Arden, and Touchstone belongs to the court of Duke Frederick. So, we see a rustic and a courtly talk between the two. Then we meet the heroine of the play, Rosalind, in the forest of Arden. She is dressed as Ganymede. She enters reading a poem that she has found on a tree. Every other line rhymes with Rosalind, and Touchstone mocks it when she reads it. So again we see a very mild talk between Rosalind and Touchstone is making fun of Rosalind while she is reading the poems written by Orlando. But Rosalind does not know about the writer of the sonnets. Then Celia, she is dressed as Eleanor, and she enters with the poem by Orlando as well. She proceeds to read it, and it turns out to be addressed to Rosalind. Celia sends away Corin and Touchstone because she wants to have a private talk with her sister Rosalind. And then she asks Rosalind whether she knows who is the writer of the sonnets. Rosalind says that she does not know, and then pleads with Celia that please tell her if she knows about the writer of the sonnet. Celia finally reveals that Orlando is the man who is writing the sonnets on every tree in the forest. So now Rosalind gets to know about the love of Orlando for her, and she is very willing to meet Orlando now. Now what happens in the next in the same scene, in scene 2, the scene is very long and lots of happenings are taking place in the scene. Then we meet Orlando, the hero of the play, and Jacques, who is a courtier of his. And then what we hear here we have a small conversation between Jacques and Orlando, and while Jacques is making fun of, he is mocking at the badly written sonnets by Orlando. So a small conversation between Orlando and Jacques takes place in the scene. Next, Rosalind comes out and speaks to Orlando, asking him what the time is. Then Orlando tells her that there is no time in the forest, but then the heroine, the witty heroine of Shakespeare, points out that time moves at different speeds for everyone. Then she introduces Celia as a shepherdess and her sister. Orlando thinking she is a young man, because Rosalind is disguised as Ganymede. So Orlando thinks her to be a young man and remarks that she has a superb accent for a rustic man. Rosalind pretends to have had an uncle from the island who taught her how to speak. So again, Rosalind is disguised as Ganymede, and now Rosalind and Orlando have met in the forest, but Orlando does not know who is she, or the man Ganymede is Rosalind in disguise. Now Rosalind is playing a prank on Orlando, and then she tells him that a man has been going around the forest ruining the trees by carving the name Rosalind on the trees. So Rosalind knows that it's Orlando, but she is pretending not to be knowing that, and she asks Orlando about the man who is writing all the poems on the trees. Orlando admits to being that man and asks if she knows a remedy. So the lover is seeking a remedy through his beloved Rosalind, but Orlando does not know that Ganymede is Rosalind, it's herself. Then Rosalind tells him that he is obviously not in love with Rosalind because his cheeks are not lean and he looks completely fine. Then Orlando swears that he is in love with Rosalind and asks if there is a cure. So again, Rosalind is playing pranks upon Orlando, and she tells him she once before cured a man of his love by making the man pretend that she was his mistress. So she is asking Orlando that he must assume Ganymede to be his mistress, and then she will give a remedy for his love. Then Orlando tells her that he does not want to be cured, but Rosalind says that if he pretends she is Rosalind, and if he pretends to be his lover, she will do her best to cure him. Then Orlando, being very ignorant about the whole thing, agrees to her, and he goes to the cottage of Rosalind in the forest of Arden. So in the act 2 of the play, we see that the two major characters, Rosalind and Orlando, the lovers and the beloveds, the main couple, the major couple in the romantic comedy, meets in the jungle, and the scene 2 of act 2 ends at a very positive note when Rosalind and Orlando are having a meeting in the cottage in forest of Arden. I guess enough for today. Please go through the scene 3, in scene 4 and scene 5 of Act 2, and we'll discuss in the next class. So in the next class we'll be finishing the Act 3 and the play, and we'll discuss the structure and the themes of the play in the upcoming classes. Enough for today. Thank you.